Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Midday Prime. I'm Gautam Roy and this is the show where we get you all the day's updates from the country and abroad, and also from sports, entertainment, apart from business and economy, within 1 hour. And we'll tell you in this show what is happening on the climate front. Multiple activities taking place. There's a draft agreement that is out at COP26. The US and China have had an understanding on how to deal with climate change, and a lot of initiatives also in terms of the International Solar Alliance. All these have happened in the course of the last 24 to 36 hours, and we're all bringing them together in Midday Prime. But first, the big news right now. Draft agreement at COP26 Glasgow Climate Summit calls developed world to double finance for adaptation and for tougher emission pledges by 2022. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to launch RBI Retail Direct Scheme and the Reserve Bank Integrated Ombudsman Scheme on the 12th of November, which is tomorrow. Launch of the two innovative customer-centric initiatives will also see attendance by Union Finance Minister and RBI Governor. Heavy rains continue to pound Tamil Nadu. Red alert issued for 8 districts. Southern Railways temporarily suspends suburban train services. NDRF teams, state police and fire force step up relief and rescue operations. $110.23 crore vaccine doses administered so far under the nationwide COVID-19 vaccination drive. Union Health Minister Mansukh Lal Mandavia meets health ministers of states virtually to give more impetus to Prime Minister's call of Har Ghar Dastak. Also, in a surprise announcement at COP26 Climate Summit in Glasgow, US and China agreed to boost climate cooperation over the next decade. The two countries released rare joint declaration promising action. And in sports, Pakistan will take on Australia in the second semi-final of the ongoing T20 World Cup at the Dubai International Cricket Stadium today. All right, time to get things underway with the big news. Well, countries worldwide are being urged to strengthen their carbon cutting targets by the end of 2022 in a draft agreement published at the COP26 Glasgow Climate Summit. The document says vulnerable nations must get more help to cope with the deadly impact of global warming. It also says countries should submit long-term strategies for reaching net zero by the end of next year. Critics have said the draft pact does not go far enough, but others welcomed its focus on the 1.5 degrees Celsius or centigrade target. The document, which has been published by the UK COP26 presidency, will have to be negotiated and agreed upon by countries attending the talks. Scientists have warned that keeping temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, beyond which the worst impacts of climate change will be felt, requires global emissions to be cut by 45% by 2030. and to zero overall by mid-century. With the world off track to meet the goal, the draft document urges countries to revisit and strengthen the targets for cutting emissions by 2030 in the national plans to align them with the Paris Agreement goal of well below 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of 2022. Loss and damage, an issue of key importance to the developing world, has been included in the draft, calling for more support from developed countries and other organizations to address the damage caused by extreme weather and rising seas in vulnerable nations. It also recognizes that more finance is needed for developing countries beyond the long-promised $100 billion a year by 2020, which will not be delivered until at least 2022. But campaigners say these parts of the text are weak and essentially a box-ticking exercise. The document also calls on countries to accelerate the phasing out of coal and subsidies for fossil fuels, but has no firm dates or targets on the issue. It also asks UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to convene world leaders in 2023 to consider how efforts to reach targets for 2030 are shaping up. What's also happened is that the United States and China have agreed to boost climate cooperation over the next decade in a surprise announcement at COP26 Climate Summit in Glasgow. The two countries released a rare joint declaration promising action. It says both sides will recall their firm commitment to work together to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature goal set out in the Paris Agreement. They call for stepping up of efforts to close the significant gap that remains to be achieved in that target. China's top climate negotiator Shi Xinhua told reporters that on climate change there is more agreement between China and US than divergence.
Climate is a common challenge faced by humanity and will impact the well-being of future generations.
It's becoming
Increasingly urgent and severe, turning a future challenge into a crisis happening now. In the area of climate change, there is more agreement between China and the US than divergence, making it an area with a huge potential for cooperation. With 2 days remaining until the end of the summit, we hope this joint declaration will be China and US's contribution to its success.
And US Climate Envoy John Kerry meanwhile said the agreement with China was a statement of support for a successful United Nations Climate Summit, with both taking a step towards closing the emissions gap. Kerry said, and I quote, "The US and China had no shortage of differences, but on climate cooperation is the only way to get this job done."
Now, the two largest economies in the world have agreed to work together to raise climate ambition in this decisive decade. Together, we set out our support for a successful COP26, including certain elements that will promote ambition. But let me be clear, this declaration is a step that we can build on in order to help close the gap. The United States and China have no shortage of differences, but on climate, cooperation is the only way to get this job done. This is not a discretionary thing, frankly. This is science. It's math and physics that dictate the road that we have to travel.
And EU Climate Policy Chief Frans Timmermans has said it was really encouraging to see China and the US working together.
That's good news. It's really encouraging to see that those countries who were at odds in so many areas have found common ground on what is the biggest challenge humanity faces today. It shows that also the US and China know this subject transcends other issues, and it certainly helps us here at COP to come to an agreement.
And that gives impetus to the generalized call for action on all fronts by everyone. And British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has urged world leaders on Wednesday to go further in their pledges at the climate conference in Glasgow, saying the goal of limiting the global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius remains within reach. He said a UN climate change summit had made progress towards halting runaway global warming, but more was needed to seal the deal. Johnson said that there may not be any solution to climate change right now, but at the summit he expressed hope there is the possibility that the summit will come away with the first genuine roadmap for a solution to anthropogenic climate change. He expressed hope that there will be some of the types of solutions that the world needs to adopt.
We're not going to arrest climate change right here, right now. That is just impossible. But there is the possibility that we will come away from this with the first genuine roadmap for a solution to anthropogenic climate change that I can think of in my lifetime. And the most depressing thing about climate change has been that it doesn't really look as though it's capable of being fixed anytime soon. I think what you could have is some of the types of solutions that the world needs to adopt to do it.
Now, with only days left at the United Nations COP26 summit, Johnson travelled to Scotland to try to chivvy other leaders to hand their negotiators more room to reach agreement on the thorniest issues of finance and emissions targets. Johnson's intervention in the frantic final hours of the two-week summit in Glasgow has come as a draft text urges countries to boost their emissions cutting goals by 2022. Now, the Glasgow Declaration on Zero Emission Cars and Vans unveiled at climate talks in the Scottish city sees the group's pledge to rapidly accelerate the transition to low carbon emission vehicles, aiming to green leading markets by 2035. Headline signatories included Ford and General Motors, the world's second most populous country, India, and major corporate purchasers of vehicles including LeasePlan, which rents 1.7 million cars in 30 countries. Excuse car makers Toyota Motor Core and Volkswagen AG, as well as major car markets China, the US and Germany, did not sign up, highlighting the challenges in shifting to zero emissions. One of the COP26 goals is to secure global net zero by mid-century and to keep 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature rise within reach. Countries are being asked to come forward with ambitious 2030 emissions reduction targets that align with reaching net zero by the middle of the century.
We have been clear that the overarching aim of this COP is to keep the Paris temperature goal within reach. So it was clear that road transport, which accounts for 10% of global emissions, must be a priority. As a presidency, we have urged governments and manufacturers to commit to end the sale of polluting vehicles. And we decided to build up international collaboration to get the transition to zero-emission vehicles moving faster.
Meanwhile, a group of young delegates at the UN Climate Conference held a protest on Wednesday against a proposed carbon credit system they described as worthless zombie credits. The protesters said the carbon credit system would not lead to reduction in CO2 emissions. Okay, now a lot of things happening and the draft agreement is out there as well to be negotiated upon, and to talk about it we have Upendra Tripathi, former DG International Solar Alliance. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Tripathi. What do you make, what are your first thoughts on the draft agreement, because there's a lot of stuff that is being said about it, more good than bad I think, but let's see what you have to say about it first.
Well, COP is always a very important event in the year, and the 26th COP was there. It is full of a lot of promise, as always. And this time, of course, India has made it big. It has attracted world attention, A, by persuading the USA to become the 101 member of ISA, and B, by giving the world even they didn't expect about the promise that by 2070, the zero emission, the net zero status will be obtained. And number three, of course, reiterating the demand for $1 trillion, grant from the public bodies. And number four is more sincere action. ISA being an example, the International Organization for Disaster Management being the second example, opening up a window for the small island countries. So India has been very visible, and India's presence has been recognized by the world, particularly when you find China, Russia, and the Latin American countries are relatively, were not so prominent this time, although they made their country this thing. But the overall things beyond, once Glasgow is over and we go back and we filter the things, a lot will depend on, again, what India put forth, that finance and technology.
Yes.
But finance, although you don't find a new, World Climate Bank having been created, but on the technology side, there has been a very good improvement. There is something called, they came up with a breakaway declaration, the breakthrough agenda. And the breakthrough agenda actually breaks different sectors. And I think India pioneered it, when India said the railways will be net zero. It was actually a particular sector India was hinting at, and that perhaps has inspired the world to go into sectors like finance, sectors like steel, sectors like, the green sectors that can be brought in. So overall, I would say that this has been a very prominent event of the year, and it is very critical because this is the time either we can keep it below 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century, if we really implement the things that we promised to do by 2030. And B, I feel that countries have to be really more serious now in the finance front, because finance is going to be the critical factor. But does the draft agreement indicate that seriousness? Because it's only urging countries to cut emission targets. It's saying that climate finance should be doubled from $100 billion to $200 billion, when the minimum that is being sought, India sought $1 trillion. The minimum that's being sought by many others, a lot of campaigners are also saying, is $500 billion. And even the $100 billion target has not been met yet. It will only be met in 2023. That is really pathetic that, the $100 billion was supposed to come from the developed countries, but they included private finance. Now, interestingly, if you look at the declaration, it talks about, it doesn't give a figure. It tells about finance from all sources, yes, including public and private. And B, it doesn't talk about that $5 trillion we need. It talks about, beyond the 100 billion per year climate finance. So it doesn't say how much beyond. It doesn't promise anything more than, how much. It doesn't give a concrete figure. So if you look at it, they have listened to countries like India, but they haven't made any specific declaration. They said, yes, we will, it should be more than 100 billion, but how much more? It should be more. They didn't say how much more. And they made it very clear that this finance will be from all sources, which means, it includes public, private, everything.
Yes, and also on, more NDCs, tougher NDCs, more ambitious NDCs. In fact, the entire draft is being said to be not ambitious at all. It is being criticized as being weak.
See, what these countries, LDCs, 470 million, 370 million is not a really big figure for them, because, the climate suffering for them is really concrete and critical. What they need perhaps is a dedicated climate World Bank sort of thing, a bank dedicated to climate finance, and they mobilize funds, they raise green bonds, they mobilize innovative finance. So you need a world to commit to a dedicated climate bank. We call it sustainable, climate bank or sustainable bank or solar bank, whatever you call it. But the seriousness of the world towards the issue of finance for developing countries and LDCs has to come through dedicated institutions.
Yes, certainly. And I'll request you to stay on because you mentioned this, but we'll give some more details to our viewers. And since you are the former DG of ISA, we'll talk about it as well. Now, in a big boost to accelerate global adaptation and adoption of solar energy, the United States of America has become the 101st country to join the International Solar Alliance, that's the ISA or ISA, to catalyze global energy transition through a solar-led approach. Signing the framework agreement, U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate Change, John Kerry said, and I quote him, "It has long been coming and we are happy to join the International Solar Alliance, which Prime Minister Narendra Modi took the lead in making. This will be an important contribution to more rapid deployment of solar energy globally." India welcomed the US as the 101st member of the ISA. Union Cabinet Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Bhupendra Yadav said, and I quote, "This move will strengthen the ISA and propel future action on providing a clean source of energy to the world." Well, let's just understand what ISA is all about, and for that we'll take you through some of the major milestones of this landmark body set to harness solar energy like never before in the world. What happened was November 2015 was the first proposed by PM Narendra Modi in a speech at Wembley Stadium. The PM referred in fact to sunshine countries as Suryaputra or sons of the sun, and in 2014 124 sunshine countries worldwide have been identified, which lie between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. In November 2015, ISA was launched by Prime Minister Modi at India-Africa Summit and a meeting of member countries ahead of COP21 in Paris. And in January 2016, Prime Minister Modi and then French President François Hollande jointly laid ISA headquarters foundation stone. Again, in January 2016 itself, interim ISA Secretariat was also inaugurated at National Institute for Solar Energy in Gurugram. June 2016, if we come to that, ISA entered into an understanding with the World Bank to accelerate mobilization of finance. Now, what will the World Bank be doing? World Bank will be playing a major role in mobilizing $1 trillion plus in investments needed by 2030 to meet ISA's various goals. Now, ISA Framework Agreement, again in November 2016, opened for signatures in Marrakesh on the sidelines of COP22. That's the Conference of Parties in the year 22. The 22nd one, in fact. January 2018, India announced $350 million Solar Development Fund at WFES Abu Dhabi for solar projects finance. Again in January 2018, India, ISA with World Bank also launched Global Solar Atlas at the same event in Abu Dhabi. Now this Global Solar Atlas is a free online tool showing annual average solar power potential at any spot in the world. Furthermore, the Global Solar Atlas identifies potential sites for solar power generation as well. Now, if we come to more recent events, 3rd of November 2021, India and UK jointly launched Green Grids Initiative One Sun, One World, One Grid during COP26 at Glasgow. Now, this is, of course, building solar project pipeline of nearly 5 gigawatts installed capacity. This is also something that ISA is doing. The project will realize the vision of interconnected global grids. Now, the next day, 4th of November 2021, ISA announced partnership with GEAPP to accelerate energy transition in LIDCs and LIDCSs and in fact in SIDSs. This is a collaboration to unlock $100 billion in public-private capital for significant solar capacity generation globally. Also on the 10th of November, which was just yesterday, US became the 101st member of ISA by signing its framework agreement. So these are some of the significant milestones that we've been talking about. Now, Mr. Tripathi, if I could ask you, to what extent can really ISA contribute to the larger goal of mitigating climate change is now perhaps become more and more evident to the world, which is why the US has joined us as well.
True, because the International Solar Alliance has been very popular because it gives a clear vision. It says it is solar, and it talks about a model that we can run with the solar energy, and then it is at grassroots level also. It promotes projects at large scale. It talks about finance and the big things like the One Sun, One World, One Grid, or the Green Grid initiative that we are talking about. This is giving a vision, that the entire world can be interconnected and the energy security of all can be ensured, through solar. And it brings out, India's showpiece about the green energy corridor that India has developed with the help of Germany, can be a model for other countries. So through International Solar Alliance, actually, a number of best practices that has helped India have an opportunity to move further. And in that respect, the Solar Alliance is doing wonderful work all over, and it has become, very, very attractive as a model to address issues of sustainability and energy security in most countries, including the LDCs and the developing world.
Yes, now we know why the US took time to join in. To a large extent, the Trump presidency period was also one of the reasons, but there are others as well. But how important is the US joining the ISA at this juncture?
Well, I remember initially we met Mr. John Kerry for support, USA support, and USA was very much interested. In fact, they helped in the process. But then there was a political change in presidency, and hence it went to the cold storage. But I'm happy that with the new Biden administration, they have moved very fast, and they have signed the framework agreement, being the 101 countries, the member country, and that itself is a good sign, and it will bring a lot of enthusiasm all over. The ISA, USA joining ISA, it will ensure some sort of financial sustainability and a lot more collaboration. Plus, it will encourage a lot of countries who have not joined, perhaps to come in now and to join ISA, so that one day, we can have all the UN member countries as our members.
Right. And where do you see the ISA going from here? Because we are talking about 1,000 gigawatts now.
If you look at, 2015 in COP21, when ISA was launched, and now within 6 years, the world has crossed around 700 gigawatt, and year to year, some $150 billion comes to the solar investment purpose. But the problem has been that, most countries who need it perhaps don't get that investment. It has not been very equitable or uniform, to ensure energy security. And then we have, solar generation across sectors. We would like a sort of, uniform distribution over the sectors, whether building, agriculture, health, solar can go into any sector. So between 2015, 30th November, when it was launched, and in 6 years' time, not only ISA has got 100 member countries, but it has made tremendous impact among leading in the developing world as well as in the LDCs. And it has in fact got 50 innovative pilot projects in different least developed countries, LDCs, and which has been very useful to understand solar. So if you look at the, there are countries in 2015 where people never heard much about solar, heads of governments and heads of countries. But ISA itself has been a message and symbol, and Prime Minister Modi's, the call for scale, speed, and spade in climate change, speed. That is, you have to have skill sets, you have to scale, and you have to speed in it if you want to address. So ISA has been an example of these three doctrines that we are talking about, that even in the climate change, if you would like really to address and succeed, we have to have speed, skill, and scale, and ISA is an example of that.
Great, wonderful, and let's hope that the ISA goes further from strength to strength. It has already made significant progress, and it makes more rapid progress in the days to come as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Tripathi, to talk about it. All right, let's now move on to our developing story. Well, the 51st Conference of Governors and Lieutenant Governors began at Rashtrapati Bhavan today. President Ramnath Kovind is presiding over the conference. This is the fourth conference being presided over by President Kovind. Apart from governors and lieutenant governors of all states and union territories, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and Union Home Minister Amit Shah will be attending the conference, and in fact are attending the conference as well. In his inaugural address, President Ramnath Kovind said that India undertook a comprehensive and effective campaign against COVID-19 pandemic. The President lauded Corona warriors for their work during the pandemic.
सरकार की अभूतपूर्व पहल एवं हमारे वैज्ञानिकों और उद्यमियों के प्रयासों के बल पर देश में वैक्सीन का विकास और विशाल पैमाने पर उत्पादन संभव हो सका है। आज 108 करोड़ से भी अधिक वैक्सीनेशन करके देशवासियों को महामारी से बचाने के अभियान में हम तेजी से आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। इस सम्मेलन के प्रतिभागियों के लिए यह संतोष का विषय है कि कोविड की आपदा का सामना करने में राज्यपालों ने भी अपना सक्रिय योगदान किया। अनेक राज्यों ने दूसरे राज्यों के अच्छे प्रयासों को अपनाया। इन समग्र प्रयासों के परिणाम स्वरूप हमारे देश ने अनेक विकसित देशों की तुलना में कोविड की आपदा का सामना बेहतर ढंग से किया है।
And President Kovind also said that one important topic, that is best practices in Raj Bhavan, will also be deliberated upon in the meeting today.
आज के सम्मेलन में चर्चा का एक और भी महत्वपूर्ण विषय है बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस एट राज भवन। इस संदर्भ में यह उल्लेखनीय है कि टीबी के उन्मूलन, रेड क्रॉस संस्था से संबद्ध गतिविधियों तथा सैनिक वेलफेयर बोर्ड की जिम्मेदारियों से आप सभी सीधे तौर पर जुड़े हुए हैं। मैं आशा करता हूं कि अपनी रिपोर्ट तथा प्रस्तुतियों में आप सब इन विषयों पर भी विशेष प्रकाश डालेंगे तथा अपनी बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस साझा करेंगे। साथ ही कोरोना की आपदा का सामना करने के दौरान जन कल्याण कार्यों तथा वैक्सीनेशन में तेजी लाने के प्रयासों को भी आप रेखांकित करें।
The President also stressed on the role of governors in inclusive growth and development of the country.
राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति की अनुशंसाओं को कार्यरूप देने में आप सभी राज्यपालों की महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका है। कुलाधिपति के रूप में आप सब लोग युवा भारत के निर्माण की प्रक्रिया से सीधे तौर पर जुड़े हुए हैं। राष्ट्र निर्माण की दृष्टि से यह बहुत बड़ी जिम्मेदारी है। मुझे विश्वास है कि शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में आपके योगदान के बल पर भारत को नॉलेज सुपर पावर बनाने का हमारा राष्ट्रीय लक्ष्य अवश्य सिद्ध होगा।
In the welcome address, Union Home Minister Amit Shah said, under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the nation and all states have successfully faced the pandemic, adding the whole world is praising India for its successful fight against COVID-19.
कोविड महामारी के खिलाफ माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में एक राष्ट्र, एक जन, एक मन इस सूत्र को चरितार्थ करते हुए जिस प्रकार से लड़ाई लड़ी गई, आज पूरी दुनिया वो लड़ाई लड़ने की हमारी पद्धति और मिली हुई सफलता की भूरी भूरी प्रशंसा करती है। इस महामारी के दौरान प्रधानमंत्री जी ने लगभग 20 बार सभी राज्यों के मुख्यमंत्रियों के साथ वीडियो कॉन्फ्रेंस कर और कई बार व्यक्तिगत रूप से बातचीत कर भी राज्यों का मार्गदर्शन किया और इस महामारी के दौरान माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने राज्यपालों के साथ भी बैठक कर कोविड महामारी के लिए राज्यपाल भवन, राजभवन क्या कर सकता है, इसके लिए भी बात की थी।
The Home Minister also said that it is the time of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav and the Governors' Conference this time holds special importance.
प्रधानमंत्री जी ने अपने अभिभाषण में कहा है कि हम 75वें वर्ष तक सीमित रहना नहीं चाहते। 75 आजादी के 75वां वर्ष से 100 वर्ष, ये 25 साल को हम अमृत काल के रूप में मनाएंगे और 100 वर्ष के बाद भारत कहाँ खड़ा होगा इसका संकल्प भी लेंगे और इस संकल्पों को सिद्धि में परिवर्तित करने के लिए हम कार्य योजना भी बनाएंगे। अमृत काल का लक्ष्य भारत और भारत के नागरिकों के लिए समृद्धि और सफलता के नए शिखर का आरोहण करने का वर्ष रहेगा, ऐसा मुझे विश्वास है। इसमें सभी राज्यपाल महोदयों की भूमिका और सक्रियता दोनों सुनिश्चित होगी, इसका मुझे विश्वास है।
Well, for more on this, I have my colleague Arun Sharma joining us as well. Arun, I understand the conference is ongoing right now, so what more is left to unfold and what can we expect to emerge, altogether from this Governors' Conference?
So, Gautam, when we talk about this Governors' Conference, there are various themes as far as this conference is concerned that relates to health, education, coordination between center and state. But yes, of course, the big takeaways of President Ramnath Kovind were, absolutely that. He clearly highlighted this point that the governors in our country are the friend, philosopher, and guide of the state government. So big statement over there and big appeal and a very powerful appeal made by President Ramnath Kovind that the center and state coordination should be there, and whatever policies that are being implemented by the center, it should be ensured by the governors and of course the state governments over there, that it actually reaches the common person, the common people, and of course the far-flung areas as well. We look at some of the big highlights of President Ramnath Kovind. He's basically set the agenda that this time around the Governors' Conference will focus upon the health, education aspect and how better coordination can be done. We know this fact that as far as climate change is concerned, India has made a very ambitious target of becoming a carbon neutral or net zero by 2070. So how can state governments and of course how can primarily the governors who have the constitutional power can ensure that there is a better coordination between state and center, and of course what important steps and significant steps states can take in order to ensure that the climate emissions are controlled, and what state level steps can be taken so that the climate change, the climate action can be ensured. That means ecology and economy going hand in hand so that India can achieve the net zero target by 2070. Another important aspect is about the best practices as far as vaccination is concerned. We know this fact that some of the states like Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Goa, some of the northeastern states, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, Daman and Diu. So all these states and UTs have achieved 100% target as far as first dose of vaccine is concerned in their respective states.
Yes.
So all the best practices in these respective states can be replicated or implemented in other states so that they can also achieve the 100% vaccination target as far as first dose is concerned. That can be achieved. So yes, health, education, and one of the big takeaways is also about the TB. Now, we know this fact that the target that was set by India was 2030, that India will be completely free from TB. But now India is going to achieve this target by 2025. So how can state and center coordinate together? How can at the district level, Gram Panchayat level, the block level, it can be ensured that TB can be eradicated? How can better health infrastructure can be created? So there are various sessions going on right now that relates to health, education, center and state coordination, and the big achievements or big resolution that can be taken in this new decade. But President Ramnath Kovind's address has clearly set the tone of this entire governors' conference this time around.
Certainly, and you keep an eye out for what else is unfolding over there and is likely to emerge. We'll take updates from you later on as well. For the moment, thank you a lot, Arun Sharma. Now, let's move on to National Prime. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be launching two innovative customer-centric initiatives of the Reserve Bank of India tomorrow at 11 in the morning through video link. These initiatives are the RBI Retail Direct Scheme and the Reserve Bank Integrated Ombudsman Scheme. The RBI Retail Direct Scheme is aimed at enhancing access to government securities market for retail investors. It offers them a new avenue for directly investing into securities issued by the Government of India and state governments. Investors will be able to easily open and maintain their government securities account online with the RBI free of cost. The Reserve Bank Integrated Ombudsman Scheme aims to further improve the grievance redressal mechanism for resolving customer complaints against entities regulated by the RBI. The central theme of the scheme is based on One Nation, One Ombudsman, with one portal, one email and one address for the customers to lodge their complaints. There will be a single point of reference for customers to file their complaints, submit documents, track status and provide feedback. A multilingual toll-free number will be providing all relevant information on grievance redressal and assistance for filing of complaints. Union Finance Minister and RBI Governor will also be attending the event. And now we're turning our gaze south because a red alert has been issued for 8 districts in Tamil Nadu today as rains continue to pound the state in the wake of a depression that is set to cross the state's coastline this evening. The districts include Chennai, which is the capital of Tamil Nadu, Tiruvallur, Ranipet, Vellore, Salem, Kallakurichi, Tirupattur and Tiruvannamalai. In Chennai, heavy rainfall measuring up to 14 centimeters and surface winds with speed around 45 kilometers per hour was reported from parts of the city, flooding areas like T Nagar, Velachery, Vaisarpalli, Kolathur and Pammal. The Southern Railway today temporarily suspended suburban train services on the west section from Moor Market Complex to Tiruvallur and beyond due to waterlogging on the tracks. However, suburban train services on the other 3 sections are being operated in reduced frequency according to the Sunday schedule. The heavy overnight rain led to several areas in South Chennai going without power due to cable faults, feeder line stripping and a precautionary shutdown. Officials said power had been disrupted in parts of Pallavaram, Pammal, Vengai Vasal, Seethalpakkam, Thorepakkam and Selayur. The area served under the Information Technology Corridor due to tripping of feeders in substations. Power supply was also cut due to waterlogging to avoid any untoward incidents in Velachery, Anakapatur, Taramani, Vasant Nagar and Adyar. The Chennai City Traffic Police said a number of subways were closed due to waterlogging, including in places like Vyasarpadi, Ganeshapuram, T Nagar, Paravantangal, Tambaram and Villivakkam. Meanwhile, due to severe rains and heavy crosswinds, arrivals at Chennai airport will remain suspended from 1:15 in the afternoon, that is PM, to 6 PM today itself. Departures, although, will continue. Now, the heads of National Security Councils of 7 nations in Delhi for the Regional Security Dialogue in Afghanistan, hosted by National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, collectively called on Prime Minister Narendra Modi after the completion of the dialogue. Prime Minister emphasized 4 aspects that countries in the region would need to focus on in the context of Afghanistan: the need for an inclusive government, a zero-tolerance stance about Afghan territory being used by terrorist groups, a strategy to counter trafficking of drugs and arms from Afghanistan, and addressing the increasingly critical humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan as well. The PM also expressed the hope that the regional security dialogue would work to revive Central Asia's traditions of moderation and progressive culture and counter extremist tendencies. Prime Minister Modi appreciated the participation of the senior dignitaries in the Delhi security dialogue despite the challenges posed by the pandemic. The third regional security dialogue on Afghanistan concluded that the Taliban-ruled countries' territories cannot be used for terror activities. 5 Central Asian republics, Russia and Iran, joined India in acknowledging the Delhi Declaration. It supported a stable and inclusive Afghanistan and reaffirmed a firm commitment to combat terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, including its financing, infrastructure, radicalization, and to ensure that the country never becomes safe haven for global terrorism. Another point that was made, Amrit Pal, my colleague, is joining us and we talked to him about it over the phone line. Amrit, another point that was made about this was unimpeded and direct access as well to Afghanistan, and for India that has been very important for years and years now, but right now the situation has changed, and I believe that even Pakistan is having a similar event at some stage, perhaps today itself, a meeting of the NSA type of a meeting there as well, where China, which did not come to New Delhi, will be participating too. So is that will that be expected to be reflected there as well?
Yes, you're right that Pakistan is working for the Troika Plus with Pakistan, China, the United States and Taliban governments are participating. This is happening in Islamabad today. You're right that China, which chose not to participate in this, is being represented by the Special Envoy for Afghanistan, Yui Shigzhong, where China is participating. Now, their objective essentially is, the stated objective is to find ways to bring lasting stability and peace in Afghanistan. What happened in New Delhi yesterday at the NSA's meeting was essentially, as you put out, ways to see that the Afghan soil does not become, is not used for terror activities, radicalization or radical ideology is not exported out of Afghanistan, unimpeded access to humanitarian, for humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan and Afghan people is needed. Now, what needs to be seen further is that how that is implemented, because Taliban was not a part of these talks. It was not invited because none of the countries have.
But Taliban has welcomed the dialogue in Delhi.
That's right. Sultan Shaheen has said, speaking to a media house, he did say that if these are the objectives, then Afghanistan welcomes that. But what remains to be seen, as I said, is that how will that be affected? How do you bring that into effect? For example, there is 50,000 metric tons of wheat waiting at the border.
Yes, we want to send it through Wagah, but it's not happening.
Yes, Pakistan is not yielding to Indian assistance going to Afghanistan. So these are the hiccups there. And also Taliban is not helping by, not bringing an inclusive government, as you rightly said to the Prime Minister when he met these visiting NSAs. he did bring this point up in his 4-point focus, saying that an inclusive government is a requirement. Now, this is agreed at Doha, an inclusive government which the Taliban has not delivered. So these are the stumbling blocks in getting humanitarian access to Afghanistan. But yes, there is a certain sense of consensus building around the world that these are the issues that the world is bothered about. Whether terrorism is exported or Afghan soil is used for terrorism against other countries, which the Taliban said that it in principle agrees to that will not allow. But the evolving humanitarian situation and how to get aid and assistance to the Afghan people because they're staring at mass starvation is the big question and dilemma facing the world today.
Yes, certainly, and let's hope that the baby is not thrown out with the bathwater, because Pakistan may not like New Delhi's involvement in this, but some very critical points have been made as part of the Delhi dialogue, and let's see what kind of attention and action is followed up with that talks in Islamabad as well, where a lot of these significant countries, China is there, the US and Russia also there, of course the Taliban government there too. So let's see what happens there as well. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Amritpal. All right, now the 12th district of Meghalaya, Eastern West Khasi Hills, was officially inaugurated by Chief Minister Conrad K. Sangma amidst a festive mood in Mairang on Wednesday. This new district, with its headquarters in Mairang, was bifurcated from its parent district of West Khasi Hills. The new district comprises of Mairang and Mautha Darai Shan C and RD blocks respectively. Mairang is one of the oldest civil subdivisions, which was inaugurated on the 10th November 1976, and exactly after 45 years it's been upgraded to a new district. Let's now talk about India's fight against COVID-19. Well, India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage has crossed 110.23 crore mark. Cumulatively, 110 crore 23 lakh 34,225 vaccine doses have been administered in the country so far. Over 57 lakh 54,000 vaccine doses were administered during the last 24 hours. And if we talk about the COVID-19 situation across the country as well, the recovery of 13,878 patients in the last 24 hours has increased the cumulative tally of recovered patients to over 3 crore 38 lakh. India's recovery rate now stands at 98.25%. 13,091 new cases were also reported in the last 24 hours. The active caseload is currently at 1,38,556 and it's the lowest in 266 days. Active cases presently constitute 0.4% of the country's total positive cases, which is lowest since March 2020. Now, the testing capacity across the country continues to be expanded as well. The last 24 hours saw a total of 11,89,470 tests being conducted. India has so far conducted over 61 crore 99 lakh cumulative tests. While testing capacity has been enhanced across the country, weekly positivity rate at 1.10% remains less than 2% for the last 48 days now. The daily positivity rate is reported to be 1.1% as well. The daily positivity rate has remained below 2% for the last 38 consecutive days now. And now it's time for all the business and economy updates in Midday Prime. And we've got all the business and economy updates with Tanvi.
Thank you, Gautam. In Business Prime, let's talk about the domestic stock markets first. Well, they have ruled weak so far on Thursday. So the Sensex at the BSE had slumped 521 points or 0.9% to 59,845 in afternoon deals a short while ago. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange had dropped 166 points or 0.9% to 17,851. In the broader market, the BSE Mid-Cap Index had slipped 0.7% and the Small Cap Index had lost 0.4%. The top index losers are Tech Mahindra, State Bank of India, Bajaj Finserv, NTPC, Bajaj Finance with losses of between 2% and 3%. The top index gainer today is Titan Company. But most other key Asian markets have been mixed on Thursday. So China's Shanghai Composite Index had gained 1.2% as investors snapped up battered property shares on bets that Beijing will relax policies to prevent a sector-wide collapse. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was up 1.1% and Japan's Nikkei 225 stock index had added 0.6%. But South Korea's Kospi had lost 0.2% and MSCI's broadest index of Asia Pacific shares outside Japan was down 0.9%. Overnight on Wall Street, the S&P 500 index had slumped 0.8%, its worst day in more than a month. The US Consumer Price Index surged 6.2% on an annual basis, with gasoline leading a broad-based increase that added to signs that inflation could stay uncomfortably high well into 2022 amid snarled global supply chains. US consumer prices surging at the fastest pace since 1990 last month have boosted the case for faster Federal Reserve or central banks policy tightening. So the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.7% and the Nasdaq Composite Index dropped 1.7%. Inflationary pressures are also brewing in the US labor market, with other data on Wednesday showing that the number of Americans filing claims for unemployment benefits fell to a 20-month low. Both the White House and the Fed have so far maintained that prices will fall once supply bottlenecks start easing, with the central bank only last week reiterating that high inflation is expected to be transitory as policymakers urged patience. So that's it from the world of business for now. Back to you, Gautam.
Yes, right now markets in choppy waters, perhaps because of the inflationary pressure itself. Thanks for joining us, Tanvi. And now let's take a look at what's making news across the globe as well. Well, first an update on the situation in Sudan. Sudan's main civilian political coalition rejected any negotiation with the military on Wednesday, holding to its position at its first press conference since a coup on the 25th of October led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. A statement read at the press conference attributed to spokesperson Al-Watiq El-Berer said the Forces of Freedom and Change, which had signed a 2019 power-sharing agreement with the military following the ouster of dictator Omar al-Bashir, rejected the coup and had not met with the military. The coalition said it supported Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok, who is under house arrest, but had not met with him and joined him in demanding a return to pre-coup conditions. Mediation attempts since the takeover have stalled, and while lower-level appointments have been made, neither a cabinet or head of state sovereign council have been named. Burhan has said he is committed to the democratic transition and elections in July 2023. Meanwhile, resistance committees have called for marches of millions on the 13th and 17th of November. And it's time now for all the updates from the world of sports. And to take us on a trip to different sporting arenas, we've got Samriddhi.
Well, thank you, Gautam. First up in Sports Prime, let's get you news from the world of cricket. ICC T20 World Cup tournament in the first semi-final of the tournament, which was played on Wednesday. New Zealand won and has now made it to the final. And this is for the first time that the team has managed to make it to the final of the T20 World Cup. New Zealand defeated England by 5 wickets in the first semi-final match played in Abu Dhabi on Wednesday. Daryl Mitchell played an important role in this victory of New Zealand, an unbeaten innings of 72 runs off 47 balls. Apart from Mitchell, Devon Conway also scored 46 runs. Now, New Zealand had a target of 167 runs to win, which the team set in the 19th over and got it by losing 5 wickets. In today's match of the ICC T20 Cricket World Cup, the second semi-final match will be played between Pakistan and Australia in Dubai. Now, Pakistan has won all the matches in its group and the team has topped the group. Pakistan is also performing brilliantly under pressure and is now comfortable with the conditions in the UAE. On the other hand, Australia seems to be back in form at the right time. Apart from an 8-wicket loss against England, the Finch-led side have dominated all their other matches, registering victories and beating South Africa to reach the semi-finals. Australia have a very strong fast bowling attack comprising of Josh Hazlewood, Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins, while leg spinner Adam Zampa is also doing well in the middle overs. Now, the ICC T20 rankings have been released before the first semi-final of the ICC T20 World Cup, and Pakistan captain Babar Azam continues to top the latest rankings. At the same time, Indian captain Virat Kohli, who was out of the Super 12, has suffered a loss in the rankings. Virat Kohli has slipped to 8th place in the ranking and has averaged 33 in this T20 World Cup, whereas KL Rahul has gained 3 places due to his brilliant batting. Now, Rahul scored the highest 194 runs for India in 5 matches of the T20 World Cup, and in this ranking, South Africa's Aiden Markram has also improved 3 positions and is at number 3. Now, talking about bowlers, no Indian is included in the top 10. Vanindu Hasranga is at number 1 as before. Well, that's all from sports for now. Back to you, Gautam.
Okay, we could only squeeze in cricket this time. Maybe next time we'll have more. Thanks, Sabridhi. Okay, now it's time to turn to the softer side of hard news, which is Life Prime. And in Life Prime, we're taking you all the way to Peru, where rainbow colors are splashed across small homes in a once grey neighborhood of the capital city, creating an optical illusion of a large mural which can be seen from various vantage points across Lima. The project in Lima's Leticia hillside barrio aimed at improving the lives of those in the COVID-hit community and promoting tourism. Bright paintings adorn many buildings in the neighborhood as the artwork covers an area of over 3 lakh square kilometers. The ambitious project has the backing of Lima's municipal authority, with residents joining in to bring this massive mural to life. Well, life is always brighter with more colors, isn't it? And that's all we have for the moment in this edition of MDP. The Governor's Conference is on, and we keep bringing you updates on that through the course of our other bulletins as well. So keep watching DD India.